I'm Austin Lugo.
I'm Andrew Harp.
This is With Nothing to Say.
Let's talk about Ikiru.
Before we get started today, just a quick shout out to our friends at the Sweet Spot Podcast. The Sweet Spot Podcast is in deep dives and conversations with creatives, entrepreneurs, and media personalities. Mark Seuss sets out to find the sweet spot that makes people and brands unique. Join him on this journey and find your personal sweet spot. So this week, I got to pick out the movie. I picked out one of my favorite directors, Kurosawa. He's probably easily my favorite Japanese director, probably one of my favorite directors of all time. And when going through Kurosawa, of course, you have your, typical Seven Samurai, High and Low, that sort of thing. I kind of wanted to pick something earlier in his work, and I also wanted to pick what is my favorite Kurosawa film. I think there's just something very personable about Ikiru. I think there's just something very touching about it that keeps me coming back to it.
I read, maybe a year or two ago, The Death of Ivan Ilyich, right? And it's basically that story, right? It's about a guy who, except, instead of Russian people, it's Japanese people. And it's just a guy who's not young, but not super old. He's old, but he's not
He's middle-aged.
Yeah,
right?
he's almost,
middle-aged.
Yeah, late middle age, yeah. And he's a pencil pusher, a desk jockey. And he, just kind of finds out that he doesn't have much time to live. Very Japanese movie, post World War II Japan, pretty much, with that background, a little bit.
And Akira Kurosawa has done a lot of film adaptations of very famous books. Of course, he did The Idiot, which is very good.
Right.
And he also did the version of Macbeth, which I guess is a play, but still called, what is that? The Thorn of Blood, I think it's called. Throne, right? Throne of Blood. Kurosawa is someone very interested in literature. He's someone who spent a lot of time studying literature, and you can clearly see those kind of influences in this. But kind of jumping into it, that opening scene where you have our protagonist, or rather even before that, right? You kind of have this narration.
That's
at the beginning. And they're talking about it. I think the first opening image is his stomach, right?
Yeah. They establish right away that he has cancer. Right away, they let you know that Kanji Watanabe, he is going to die very soon, relatively soon.
And you're kind of just hit with that information right at the beginning.
Yeah.
Which is pretty intense. And then of course you cut to our protagonist, and this is one of my favorite set designs in all of cinema, is that office that he's in.
The office is nice, yeah.
It's so cool.
Because of the stacks of papers and stuff.
Just absolutely
it's really
everywhere.
Good. Yeah.
And then just the way they frame Watanabe against the other members, because the way it's shot, right, it's kind of, whenever you see him, he's by himself. He's kind of alone, and he's surrounded by these just giant files, hundreds, thousands of papers.
Yeah.
And he's kind of very isolated. He's very alone. And then, of course, there's that incredible shot where they kind of have the reverse, and you see the whole rest of the team, and they're all facing each other. They're kind of all talking to each other.
He's kind of the head.
He's kind of the head of the department.
Yeah.
And he's out of focus, but then everyone else is in focus, and it just looks incredible.
Yeah, everyone has a big stack of paper and notebooks and stuff like that. They're inundated with things that they have to do, I guess. Yeah, and it sets up the fact, and it, of course, visually and sets up well that the fact that Watanabe is just kind of a busybody like everyone else there, and they establish the fact that he's super sick. He feels sick. We know he has cancer, but we don't know. He doesn't know yet. And he doesn't talk to anyone there, at least in the beginning, right? He doesn't talk to anyone there. You had that one woman who tells that joke, but she tells a joke about how it's basically a joke that the punchline is that you don't want to be out of the office because then they'll realize that they don't need you or something. That's the punchline or whatever. Watanabe, by the way, is played by Takashi Shimura, who's amazing.
Incredible. He's in a lot of Kurosawa films.
He's in a lot of Kurosawa films. He's in a lot of Godzilla films. He's in a lot of
really?
Yeah, he's in the very first Godzilla movie. He plays one of the main characters of the first Godzilla movie. He's great. He's got a really expressive face. He's got a very sad face.
He does. He just looks sad all the time.
The whole movie he looks really sad. Like which, you know, is like kind of like the thing with him, I guess. He's like a very sad character. And then, yeah, like at the beginning,
kind of the inciting incident.
Yeah, the inciting incident is, of course, when like a group of like women, they complain at the office because there's like a
swamp,
basically like a swamp.
Sewage, I guess.
It's like almost like an indent in the land or whatever. It's just like building up a lot of water and sewage, so like there's just a lot of like mosquitoes, and it's disgusting, and they're upset.
Fair. I mean, that's fair. And I love that first montage that they have.
Right, yeah,
where
it's funny.
It's a weirdly funny, like, for how dark and kind of sad
there's a
it
few
is.
really funny
there's
moments.
Like really funny moments, and I think there's something very Kafka-esque about this film, which I guess
yeah, I guess.
I mean,
I think it's way more
uplifting, certainly.
It's way more uplifting, and it's way more I'll talk about it later, but like I think like Kurosawa's like views on like bureaucracy is maybe a little bit more positive.
But you're saying like it has the possibility of being better?
Yeah, I think he sees more possibilities in the bureaucracy, even though it doesn't always work 100% of the time.
He's like optimistic about that.
He's more optimistic about it, but at the beginning it's you know, it's not working out well for at least it's not doing what it should be doing.
Absolutely, because this group of women goes to like 20 different
they keep on being passed around
ministries, and they're just passed around from one government official to another to another to another, and every time you go to a government official they're like, oh, you need to see this person and you need to see that person. And of course it just ends up going in a giant loop where they just start over again.
They're upset, understandably. At the very beginning, you know, he does a good job of setting up that, like, you know, it's not really doing what it's supposed to do in terms of like helping people. That stuff will come up more later, but that kind of sets up kind of how it's, you know, operating right now, how it's going. And then I think Watanabe, he leaves, right?
You get the first time that Watanabe is left. He's kind of disappeared. It's his first day off in 30 years. Like, he's never taken a day off before.
And everybody's like, he left? Yeah.
Like, their mind is blown. I love
they couldn't believe it.
The joke. They're like, well, if he was here another 30 days, he would have broken the record for most consecutive days. And of course, you cut to this really depressing scene of a hospital, and he's sitting in like a waiting room or something. And he's sitting across from this guy, and this guy.
That seems funny too.
It's so funny.
That's a pretty funny scene. It's pretty good.
The guy's like, Watanabe's always just super sad, and the guy's like, you know, I heard if this one thing happens, like, and the doctor tells you it's just like a mild ulcer. Yeah. And you know, not to worry about it.
He basically like does what the doctor is supposed to do, in that he is able to diagnose the fact that Watanabe has stomach cancer.
Yep. He basically says all of the symptoms, and as the scene goes on, instead of the camera moving, we actually see Watanabe come closer and closer to the camera. So it like turns from like a medium shot to like a close up. It's really incredible. And of course, the whole time Watanabe just like gets sadder and sadder until at the very end of the scene, he's just like absolutely depressed.
Yeah. Because he knows 100% that he does. But then the guy also tells him like, people will go in and they definitely have stomach cancer, but they'll say like it's an ulcer or something like that. And of course, Watanabe, after waiting a while, he goes in, and the doctor's just like, yep.
It's exactly what happens.
Yeah, exactly what happens. You have an ulcer. And he's like, are you sure I don't have stomach cancer? He's like, no, you don't have stomach cancer. And then when he leaves, like, the guy's like, he has like 6 months to live. I don't understand why the doctor just doesn't say like...
Just doesn't tell him?
Yeah, I don't understand.
Maybe the idea is like ignorance is bliss, I guess. Like, better to not know and live your life. But then that's almost more depressing. Like, wouldn't you want to know? Because then, he knows
for sure. He knows for sure whether or not like the doctor lies to him. But like, I guess I don't know what's in it for the doctor if he just lies to him.
Maybe he just doesn't like telling bad news.
I guess not. I don't know. They're just kind of like, whatever. Go, like, just trying to like, I don't know, not have him. They just don't want to like deal with maybe the fact that he gets upset. Like, they don't want him to get upset in front of them.
Maybe.
I don't know. They're just like, it's nothing, you know, just let's move on or whatever. Yeah.
And then you have that scene which Darren Aronofsky copied in Fountain. He basically stole it exactly from this movie, which is right after Watanabe walks out of the office. It's like entirely silent, and there's all these like cars and stuff coming around, and there's a couple of seconds where it's just complete silence. and then just like all of this noise comes in at once, and it's just so jarring. Like it just kind of like hits you.
Yeah, Kurosawa does that a lot, at least in the movies that I've seen now of him, is that like he'll just have like scenes or sections of the movie that are really quiet. Like no one's talking, there's no music. You really just hear like the environmental sounds pretty much. Like you never hear like, which I appreciate a lot, you know, because I don't know. I think that takes a lot of confidence.
Absolutely. You notice that actually in a lot of Japanese cinema. I mean, at least from the
they love
few directors I can think of. It's very little music often, and they love like some really good sound design. If you think of like an Ozu film, those films are so quiet. They're just like almost silent. I guess
then again though, I think of a movie like Godzilla, which is an amazing movie. That movie's a little bit louder, but it's definitely it's like a monster movie. I wouldn't say it's like so I mean they're able like, and Godzilla came out in the 50s, the same decade as this movie. So I mean they do have like, you know, Japanese cinema around this time, you know, they have a good range in terms of like the type of movie they're making.
Yeah. And then after that, Watanabe goes home, and you meet the son and the wife of the son.
Yeah, they like kind of all live together.
They all live together in this old Japanese house, and the son and his wife want to move to like a modern house, which of course is one of the big themes of Japanese cinema in the 50s. Is kind of almost the invasion of American culture. I mean, you see a lot of baseball movies and a lot of movies about kind of the generational gap between this young generation, which is very Americanized and all about modern imperialism and all that has to go with it. An older generation is, of course, a generation that was ruled by I don't think it's an emperor, but it's like a...
I know what you're talking about.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it might be an emperor, but I could be wrong.
I think you're right. I think it is an emperor. And so there's kind of this juxtaposition between the two, which you also see here. And of course, the son's whole motivation is I guess he wants his dad to kind of retire so he can get...
They're greedy. He's greedy.
They're a bit gready. He wants some of that money moolah.
No, he's mean. Yeah,
he's a bit mean.
Yeah, he's like mean to his dad. Yeah, they're just mean to his dad, and like they like shit talk him when they get home, and then like, oh, he's there. Fuck. Okay, sorry.
Oh, that's right, because he's hiding in the room.
He's
right?
like hiding in the room for some reason,
and he's all sad.
Watanabe, he kind of basically has a breakdown where he thinks about his son. He kind of flashes back.
Oh yeah, they do a lot of flashbacks in this film. Well, not a lot, but there's a couple.
Well, it's like this is the part where it's just like him like thinking about like different like memories of like his son, like playing baseball like right after his wife died because he's a widow as well. Yeah, just like he's just like thinking about like different like, you know, notable moments.
Yeah,
with his son.
Yeah. And what's so great about all of those moments is they're very quiet moments, and there's really not very much said about anything. Like the one where they're following the funeral carriage. I think the only real lines of dialogue is the son says that, you know, mommy is like she's leaving, or like we need to catch up to her or something like that.
Yeah.
And it's a really touching and sad moment.
Yeah, that stuff's pretty good. Yeah. But I almost don't even like give like a shit about the son because he's a piece of shit. Like I'm supposed to fucking, you know, I basically the only character that I feel bad for is Watanabe pretty much. Like everyone else kind of sucks.
Yeah.
But that's okay. That's kind of the point.
I think that scene really isn't about the son. I think it's really more about Watanabe.
No, I agree with you. Yeah. He's
and,
like, yeah.
And like the conflicting interests, right, he has with his son, and you know how he wants to give his son everything, and even though his son has certainly gotten a lot, it feels like he can never give enough, and he can never have enough, and obviously it's physically draining.
And then I think right after that he disappears, and
he goes to the bar, right?
Yeah, he goes to the bar. He basically like disappears, and everyone's like, "Where the fuck did he go?" And then he's like at a bar, and it's like late at night, and he's drinking. And there's like a guy there. It's like a writerly, hedonistic guy. They like meet at the bar, and the guy's like, "I'll buy you a drink." It's like, "Oh, I'm gonna throw it up anyway. It's fine." It's like I have stomach cancer, and you know they kind of talk for a little while about, you know, the fact that he's gonna die pretty much, and he's like, you know, I want to, and Watanabe's like, I want to, you know, do whatever you're going to do, you know, let's go, you know, let's fucking party. And he's like, okay. And yeah, you basically like, you get like, this is basically like a whole section of the movie where it's basically just like him and the writer guy, they're basically just going like on a hedonistic romp, you know what I mean? Which is kind of like makes sense if like, that'd be like, I feel like that's a pretty realistic like situation that would happen in that, like, you know, if you're like a middle-aged guy who is gonna die, yeah, maybe the first thing that you would do would be to just like absolutely like lose your mind. So like do a lot of drinking, you know. I think they like pick up some like girls. I'm assuming they might have paid for sex. You know, they're going to like different bars and stuff and clubs, and you know, like I think they see like a,
They go to a strip club.
They go to a strip club. Like
it's the most artistic thing a person can do.
Yeah,
it's
yeah, that's a
more
good
than
line.
art.
Yeah, that's a good line. Yeah, that's a beautiful line. Yeah, yeah. You have the really great scene that's extremely touching, like extremely sad and touching, where he sings the
piano.
where he's like has the guy play the piano and he sings the Life is Short song.
That scene hits hard.
That scene hits hard. Yeah, it's really bad. He like brings down everyone at the club.
Like,
everyone at the club is like, oh fuck,
it's
like,
really sad.
Like everyone like is just like, oh okay, and then they leave. So yeah.
And such a great performance from Watanabe. And he just looks.
He's sick. He's fucking awesome, dude.
I mean, he looks so fucking sad, and you're just like, Jesus Christ, like. Oh my god, It just hits. That's probably one of my favorite scenes in the movie. And plus the piano guy, like before, there's like a bit of a some bops. They do some like because it's supposed to take. I think it's supposed to take place in like the 30s or maybe the 40s.
No, I think it must be. It's got to take place in the 40s or 50s. Because it's post World War II.
Post World War II.
Yeah, yeah.
But at the bar they're playing like old 20s and 30s, kind of like the Charleston. Like that's the kind of dances they're doing too. They're doing like the Charleston. And
yeah.
Kind of like, you know, an homage to an era gone.
I suppose.
But I think it's interesting that Watanabe never tells anyone close to him, any of his family, any of his friends, you could say, about his stomach cancer. In fact, he only tells his stomach cancer to 2 people. Right?
That's true,
They basically have like a film noir section where they're trying to figure out like what happened.
You mean at the very end?
I mean like the whole second half.
You mean like at the funeral?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. It's like the second. I mean, there's still like there's like an hour. At the
there's
funeral,
like that whole part of the movie is like an hour. Yeah.
Like you would think.
Yeah, that part of the movie is very interesting when it kind of like switches it up a little bit in terms of just like the perspective. Yeah, but it's kind of interesting because it kind of like the movie kind of operates kind of like on 3 different parts. Mm-hmm. He has the part where like he's just doing purely hedonistic things, which I don't think there's anything wrong with like doing those things. I think it's good. But the thing about him is that like they just kind of like those moments kind of like come and go. Like those pleasurable moments, like they're pleasurable only for a second, and then that's it. You know. So then after that, he kind of, I guess, like does like the next step up from like hedonism activities, which is where he kind of like starts like basically going out with like a girl from his work, like a young girl. And kind of like he doesn't have like a girlfriend, and he doesn't have like
a sexual relationship.
No, it's not. But he you know, he doesn't really have any friends, so he kind of like befriends this person from work, and they like meet and like they like kind of hang out for the day, and they keep hanging out.
What I like about that whole section is it's basically showing what happens, because that first like hedonistic night takes so long. Right, and it's just like he's doing all these different things. He's going to bars, he's doing strip clubs.
There's nothing wrong with it, but like after it's done, it's just kind of like, well, okay. Like,
right, exactly, and that's what's so interesting about the second part, or the part where he has the girlfriend, is it's basically he's doing those hedonistic things, but now like he's getting less and less and less out of it, and you can see her getting less and less out of it each time that they meet. Yeah, and eventually he meets her while she decides to quit at the
city hall.
City hall. And starts building like little bunnies, I guess.
Yeah, she just like works at a toy factory.
Yeah, she works at like a toy factory. And he goes up to her and she's like, I don't want to do this anymore. Like, I don't want to keep seeing you. It's
kind of weird. It's just kind of like...
It's a weird relationship.
Yeah. It's like
And she feels pretty uncomfortable about it, which, I mean, I get it. And of course, everyone around, right? Everyone at City Hall and even the son, they're all like, oh yeah, he's definitely like... Because there's that one scene where they're in the house and they hold hands, or like they touch hands.
Yeah, that part of the movie is so fucking aggravating. It's like, it doesn't even like, even if he was like in a relationship with this girl, like it's none of your business. It's like, it doesn't even matter either way. You know what I mean? Like, it's completely, that scene is like really difficult when like, he's like, hey, I want to, like, he's with his son and wife, and like, he's like, hey, I got to tell you guys, and he's going to tell him he has cancer. And he's like, yeah, well, we know. And he's like, obviously he's just talking about like, he thinks that like he's seeing like that woman, and he's like scared that he's not going to get as much money or whatever. And Watanabe's just like, what the fuck?
So
and he like leaves, and it's sad because it's just like, it's completely like, it doesn't even matter either way. Like, You know what I mean? Whether or not like
it's not your money, it's not your business. Like, this
Yeah.
man worked his whole life for you, provided for you.
Yeah.
And then you're concerned about him like having someone to be with. Like, that's
it's really
crummy.
it's ridiculous. It's like very aggravating. But he gets punished basically later on for it.
Mm-hmm.
And then he has, like you said, the final meeting that they have.
Yeah. And she brings a bunny with her, and while this whole scene is going on, something Kurosawa does a lot in his films is they'll always have things going on in the background. So there's always like 2 or 3 things always going on. And so while
especially in this movie, I don't
even
know,
more so in this movie.
Yeah, like because like the samurai movies, there's like less people around,
less than the samurai movies. But I mean, in his, I guess I would say his modern films.
Yeah, his movies that take
like,
place in modern
High
day
and
times.
Low,
Yeah, okay, yeah.
A couple of his
that makes sense. Yeah, I see what you mean.
But in while they're having this conversation, she's like playing with the bunny. Behind them, there's like this giant group of people, and they're like all partying and they're having fun. And basically, the conversation that Watanabe has with this young woman is, he's like, I want to be with you. I want to hang out with you. I want to keep doing these hedonistic things. And she's like, well,
kind of like it's not like they're getting drunk or anything. They're just kind of like eating and going on a date.
He just wants. I mean, basically, what he expresses, she just kind
of wants a friend that makes him feel good. Yeah,
he's just super lonely.
Yeah,
and she makes the point of the reason that she left City Hall, the reason that she does what she does now, is that she's making something. She felt that the whole time she was at City Hall, she was basically a pencil pusher. She was just not really doing anything. Right? Just bureaucracy for the sake of bureaucracy. But now that she actually makes something, like this is an actual toy you actually bring home, and that kind of clicks in him, and like he's kind of, this when kind of wheels start turning.
Yeah, it's basically he gets into the final stage, which is just kind of like actually like working on like a project that he could. Working on something that he has the power to do that could make a difference on like a lot of people, rather than engage in like whether it be like a friendship, which is once again nothing wrong with like hanging out with your friends or your family, and there's not even I don't even think there's anything wrong with like having like hedonistic like things like drink or things like that. Like I think that's fine. He decides that like instead of like doing nothing, I probably should like use the power that I have currently while I'm still alive to like do this thing. And of course it has to go back to the group of women at the beginning who were asking about like the swampy area.
I think it's interesting the way they kind of tell this part of the story is you see him go back in the office and everyone like, oh, he's back in the office.
Whoa, that's crazy.
It's crazy. And he picks up the file of the women. He's like, I'm gonna do this. And they're like, you can't do that. And he's like, I'm gonna do it anyways. And then I think almost the very next scene, cut to.
Yeah, it's like 5 months later.
5 months later, he's dead. You're at his funeral.
You're at the funeral. It's like, watching it for the first time, it's definitely a very, whoa, it's like, huh. It is a little shocking because, I guess you're not expecting it. So it's like pretty, it's pretty effective. Yeah, but and the whole rest of the movie is, like you said, it's basically everybody at the funeral, they're having the funeral, and they're, like, getting drunk, because I think that's part of, like, Japanese funeral service. I think you drink sake or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it's just, like, all his coworkers basically just kind of, like, talking about how, like, weird he was before he died. Just like, man, he was, like, really, like, set on this thing. Like, kind of weird. I mean, he did it, And, they set up right from the beginning. They have like a bunch of reporters come and they're like, they go to the mayor and they're like, hey, like, Watanabe died, but everyone feels like he deserves the credit for like the park being open. So they were able to do it. They were able to fill in the swamp, and they were able to put like a children's park there. And the mayor just kind of like, and then what the reporters are like, he like killed himself at the park, and the mayor like correctly does say like, just check with the hospital, like he just died, like he just kind of, his body just kind of gave out because he had stomach cancer. And they were like, oh, okay. Then they leave, and they continue on with the funeral, and then all the women shut up too. And
the reporters, of course, basically are criticizing the mayor. They're like,
hey, they're not giving,
like, you recognize
you didn't really
at the speech.
Or, you didn't give him enough credit at all. You didn't give him any credit.
Yeah, and of course the mayor's like super defensive. He's like, well, this really wasn't Watanabe, this was us.
Yeah, it was everybody, which is technically correct, but still, I think both are true.
But you can see I think the whole thing when the mayor is there, I love that whole conversation when the mayor and kind of his posse are there at the funeral,
his buds, yeah.
because basically they're just a bunch of yes men to him,
Mm-hmm.
and the mayor basically spends the whole time he's there,
Yeah,
bad mouthing Watanabe, and then defending himself and saying like, here's how great I am, here's how great the things I have done. And like basically like doing kind of those like secondhand compliments where he's like technically complimenting someone else, but he's really waiting for like compliments for himself. And it's just sucks. You could see like Kurosawa's like very honest judgment of kind of this gross bureaucratic sort of politician.
Kurosawa is like more just kind of like annoyed with people who are like career vultures, like people who are just like, and that's like a kind of the part of it where it's just kind of like people who are just like looking to like kind of like step up,
Yeah.
And so like the mayor is just trying to like, get reelected or, do this, do that, just try to be as like reelectable as possible. Kurosawa is also like still kind of like imagine if this movie was made like about like a corporation or something like that. Like it wouldn't I don't like, because I think there's very little positives to be seen in like a corporation that's trying to do something, because ultimately they want to make money.
Right.
So I think like Kurosawa still is kind of, I feel like Kurosawa, even though like obviously like when it doesn't work it sucks, and it's all it is for like people to kind of like make a nice salary and get a lot of attention. But I like that Kurosawa too does think that like as long as like people are kind of like pushing as much as they possibly can, good things can be done in government, in public services and stuff like that, which was kind of refreshing when I realized that is kind of what Kurosawa was trying to say. When it's not working, it sucks. It doesn't. But when but it can work. It's just there just has to be like maybe one person, and it can be one person or several people. It's probably easier for several people. Really pushing to get things done, and it's possible.
Yeah, I definitely think that was. I mean, I guess when we talk about the end, we'll talk about kind of what happens at the end. But I think Kurosawa has the belief in this film, at least, that while bureaucracy on the surface can be very dark and pointless and a lot of pencil pushing, I think he has faith in the possibility of bureaucracy kind of being this thing.
Yeah.
That government
like someone still has to do it.
Right,
like,
someone has to do it.
Yeah, yeah.
Like it can do good things, and it does do good things, but everyone kind of just has to be on that same plane. And it seems like Watanabe, like he got on that. He got the park done.
Yeah, he high geared it. Yeah, and they just and like this whole scene is basically just all his colleagues being like, oh, remember when he did that? Like they're basically relaying their memories about the things that he did to get the park open.
Yeah, and kind of the way after the mayor leaves, they get a little more open, right? I like how the moment the mayor leaves, they move away from that very traditional seating of kind of in a line of like how you're supposed to sit, like how close you were to Watanabe, and they kind of move into like a circle, so it becomes a much more personal experience. And then they have almost this discovery of him having stomach cancer.
Yeah, they basically put the puzzle pieces together.
Yeah. And so like you just get like different scenes from different people like slowly kind of pushing their way, because at the beginning you're like, well, really, like we did this and we did that and whatnot, we didn't do that much. But then like each little thing, it's like, oh well,
I remember when he did that.
Yeah, I remember when he did that. I remember when Watanabe like faced off with the red light district, basically.
Yeah,
like a mafia of sorts,
like the Yakuza.
Yeah,
the Yakuza, they get mad at Watanabe and they basically threaten him, but he's able to, I don't know, evade their threats. He's kind of just able to stand his ground, and they're all like, "Oh, I didn't know that." Like,
pretty badass.
That's crazy that he did. Yeah, like they're all realizing like how much he actually did. That went unnoticed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And with each scene, it kind of grows and grows, and that's how they also discover that he indeed did have stomach cancer, which is kind of a fatal blow to the son, because he's like, if he had stomach cancer, he would have told me. But kind of that realization that he didn't tell him kind of breaks the son's heart. And
Whatever.
But
I mean, he gets what he deserves. I mean, seriously, it's just like, he wasn't nice enough.
He wasn't the nicest of kids.
No, it's just, Yeah, no, yeah. Yeah, the whole part of the movie is very, very well done. Yeah, I like all the... Yeah, I like the... That's basically just like a whole other movie.
It really is. I think it's basically like two separate films. There's like
It might as well be, yeah.
everything with Watanabe alive,
Mm-hmm.
and then there's the funeral, which is
Yeah.
kind of just a collection of. It's kind of almost shot like Rashomon in the sense where it's like people talking and like stories interlaid between. Except obviously,
That's a good point. It is basically like a Rashomon thing almost. Yeah, except like everyone's
has the same experience instead of like different experiences of the same thing.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah, they just all have like a different story to tell, but it all basically sums up to like how, honorable and brave, and hardworking Watanabe was before he died.
Yeah, and then they're kind of talking about all the different things he done, how he stand up to this people, how he stand up to the mayor, how he stood up to all these different people, and they're like, well then, why did he go to the park? Like, why did he die? And then the police officer comes in.
Yeah, he's a police officer. He's
to
like,
pay their respects.
He's like, I found his hat.
And he tells the story of basically the final time Watanabe is seen alive.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Which is my favorite scene in the movie.
Well, yeah, it's like one of like the greatest like cinematic moments of all time.
It's just so incredible.
It's filmed perfectly. Like it's just it's just the simple scene of him singing the song that he sung earlier, "Life Is Short," right? Mm-hmm. And him like swinging in the snow, and it's I bawled. Yeah. It's a sad scene. It's so sad. Because it's him singing the song again, but it's like recontextualized, right? Like it's him singing it in a different context where at the beginning of the movie he's singing it and because he's extremely depressed. Mm-hmm. But in this movie he's at the park, he feels good about the fact that like he was able to get the park built. But he's also not like upset that he didn't get credit. Yeah. Which
he's just happy that it was made.
Yeah, like which people are just like, oh, you didn't give him enough credit, which is probably true, but it doesn't really make. But to him, and I think arguably for any kind of civil services or public services, it doesn't necessarily matter. Credit doesn't always necessarily matter if you're able to make a difference. So yeah, if you're able to kind of like, it's like his last moment before he died. Yeah, and it's very it hits hard.
It's a heart-rending moment, and then. After that moment, everyone at the funeral comes together and like, we're gonna make a difference. We're gonna be different. We're not gonna be like
right. They're all drunk at this point too. I think they're all drunk because we have to drink sake. Yeah.
we're gonna do what we have to do. Yeah. And we're not gonna keep pushing pencils. We're gonna make a change. We're gonna do whatever needs to be done. Yeah. And of course, cut to the next day.
It's like I don't know if it's necessarily. Yeah, it's like a while. Yeah.
Not long after.
Maybe the next day they were.
Next day.
Maybe the very next day they were fine, but then after that, they probably fell out.
And then you see them all come into work, and they basically, you basically go back to the start of the movie where these people are just pushing pencils, and someone comes in and asks to do something, and they're like, oh, you just need to go see someone else. And of course, the one person who has always been pushing to Watanabe since the beginning.
I don't really know that character all that well. It's just a guy who's very defensive of Watanabe.
Yeah, I don't think he's like really much in the first half. I think it's just really at the funeral scene, and then that final scene, he kind of stands up and he's like, "Look, we've basically just become what we said we never were," which I think is probably one of the most heart-rending things about the whole experience. Is despite the fact that Watanabe did everything in his power and he got this park built,
but that guy is still fine.
The guy's fine, but he leaves City Hall basically.
Does he quit? Is that the implication?
I think so, because he leaves like in the middle of the workday.
Okay, I guess I didn't really
Yeah, he's not leading, so like I don't know if, and no one's listening to him, so it doesn't seem like.
No, it's definitely not like the best. Makes sense, right? Like I think that's just how people are in general. But like like a guy like Watanabe, like those guys like exist. Like he's not like the only person in the world that exists like that. Who works in like government or civil services or public services. I think if you have like one guy who's able to like lead and push, you can get things done. Not to say that like everything can only be done by one person. But then you have the scene where he leaves and he goes to the park and, and the park is still being used. Like, despite the fact that like everybody is still the same, like the park was built and it is being used by like a lot of people. which is like a good ending. I think it's still like a happy ending otherwise.
I think so. I think there's a lot of mixed feelings.
Yeah, that's the whole, like, what, 2.5 hour movie? You can go first. You can say your review and final thoughts, actually, real quick.
For me, this is easily one of my favorite films of all time. I haven't seen this film in probably 5 years is the last time I watched it. And I've forgotten just how absolutely incredible it is and just how much better it is than almost all films I have ever seen. I mean,
yeah, it's great.
I have, quite a few films I rate a 10, probably like 15 or 20 films. But when I watch this film relative to the other films, it just, honestly, it's kind of in its own world. And you have to say that about a lot of Kurosawa's stuff, because it's just above and beyond really anyone. And this one, it hits so hard. And even though I knew exactly what was going to happen from the moment it started, that ending is just so sad.
Yeah.
I mean, it looks absolutely beautiful. The sound design is incredible. All of the performances are just above and beyond. The story is great. I just love everything about this film. And I could watch this film every year and be just as moved, just as touched by it. I'm really glad I got to have this experience again, because it's been too long since I've seen it. So I have to give this film a 10 out of 10.
Yeah, no, I feel you. I think, it's a very masterful movie. I mean, like you said, everything about it is definitely in lane. Great performance. I think that's probably my favorite part of the movie, is just like the great performance from Takashi. Just one of the greatest actors that I've seen in movies. He's so good in everything. Great expressive, sad face, good voice, just credible. A very well constructed, there's like, the movie is kind of almost broken down in different parts like we talked about, which is nice and simple. And it's just a very emotionally potent, like you said. Like, it just like hits really, really hard. Like a Kurosawa knows exactly how to render out a feeling, even if it's an undefinable feeling. I guess I don't really have like a lot of like criticisms really at all. I think at the end of the day, I don't know if this is one of those movies where like I really should have watched this movie, probably longer, a while ago. But it is one of those movies where I love it, but I don't know if it's necessarily something I want to like rewatch over and over again. I think because it's just so like, it is really powerful, but it is like one of those, I don't know, just one of those movies that like I don't see myself like watching like every single year. But it is like incredibly good. I'll give it like a very high 9 out of 10. Maybe I like Seven Samurai a little bit more. It's hard to say. Like Seven Samurai, I just like how like the movie's like emotional. I like the epic scale.
Yeah.
But they're about neck and neck.
All right, y'all. To find more exclusive content and early access, go to patreon.com/lifethroughfiction. Of course, you can find this podcast wherever you get podcasts. And you can find me at AustinLugo12.
You can find me at Twitter at ADHarp24. I'm also on Letterboxd at RetroAndrew, RETR0 Andrew.
And as always, thank you to our wonderful editor, Shannon. They do the work that no one else can do. And thank you all for listening.
Thank you.